I bought a little tiny plant that was about 3 inches long from a nursery that's now out of business called Asiatica Nursery, which was down in Pennsylvania for a number of years. It's no longer in existence, and I spent $100 about 15 years ago on a 4-inch tall plant, which took us forever to get up to size. Nobody grows this plant anymore, but this is Ilex pedunculosa mountain mist, so it's been in the industry for probably 20 years, but no nurseries have been carrying it for whatever unknown reason. But so this is an evergreen holly. It's perfectly cold hardy in our climate. You have this really flamboyant foliage color throughout the entire year. Ultimate size is probably going to be upward in that 12 to 15 foot size range. It's if you want to brighten your winter garden with some color, this is one of the brighter options that you can have out there for what's going to essentially be like a large shrub or even a small tree. There's all these kinds of plants out there that I'm conifers out there, and I like things that open up just some different unexpected accents, so there are lots of dwarf conifers out there that are just like, they look like the same thing, right? There's like 4,000 cultivars of dwarf eastern white pine that if you don't have a label on them, you can't tell them apart. They all look the same. They're these round balls. But these are two conifers that would get me excited. This one here, Microbiota carnival, which is a variegated version of Russian arborvitae, so low spreading, kind of horizontal ground hugging habit. Best in full sun, though the literature will tell you it can take a little bit of shade. I'd be cautious with this plant in the shade. But these bold kind of cream splotches in the foliage. Normally it's kind of a blue-green color during the growing season, and when it gets cold it takes on a maroon cast. So maroon and cream in the winter, blue-green and cream in the summertime. It's just fun and it's distinctive, so it doesn't look like a part of it. And this is an actual Chamaecyparis piscifera called, I have to refresh my memory, Tamu Himura. Japanese name. Crazy. But it's a completely juvenile form of Saguaro false cypress. So it doesn't look like a Chamaecyparis because of the presentation of the foliage. It's a dwarf rounded shrub. Blue cast foliage is what you get. If you have deer, this is deer candy, so stay away from this deer with this plant. But dwarf, fun presentation, and it's going to give you much different texture than you might think of for a classic Chamaecyparis. This is old, so they grow about 2 inches a year. All right. My prediction would be probably a gumdrop shape, 4 feet high, branches to the ground. Viburnum macrocephalum, right? Yeah, macrocephalum. One of these viburnum, there's tons and tons of viburnums out there. This is one that most gardeners missed for one reason or another that I think is, I'm really happy that we're offering it again. Big white snowball-like flowers. It flowers traditionally in the springtime, early in the spring. It's like one of the first viburnums for us to see bloom. This year we're getting a repeat bloom, I think largely tied to this cultural circumstance that we've been through with wet, followed by a very dry September. But you get a good idea of what they look like. Last year this past year we listed in the catalog. I sold every plant that I had in like the first month of the season. And now I finally got it back then. So there's a couple here that you can see. It's one of these plants that, speaks directly to what we get excited about. Nobody really grows this.
Is it fragrant?
I don't know. There's a little bit of fragrance there. Yeah, it looks like a hydrangea. But it's a big shrub. 8, 10, 12 feet tall is probably going to be the mature proportion.
Is it fruit?
I expect that it will fruit. We only have one clone. So a lot of times with some of these plants, you need multiple clones in order to get good fruit set. And because we only have one clone, we don't see fruit set on this, but I expect that fruit set is possible if we had a different clone.
Sun or shade?
For this guy here, I would recommend pretty much full sun or bright overstory shade. I expect that It's true with most viburnums that as the shade increases, the quantity of blossoms decreases. So more sun, more flowers, which I think is the reason to grow this, is the flower. Probably would grow just fine in dense shade, it's just not going to flower. So this plant, from a botanical perspective, the name is in flux right now. So a number of years ago, the plant taxonomist would have said that this is an intergeneric hybrid, and it's a hybrid between Barberry, and Mahonia, which are the grape hollies. And so the proper name for it a couple of years ago would have been X. Mahoberberis, meithkeana. Okay. So the new plant classification system actually lumps most of the Mahonia into the genus Berberis. So it's up for debate whether or not this is actually an intergeneric hybrid or if it is in fact a funky barberry, Berberis meithkeana. We're still listing it in our inventory as an intergeneric hybrid, just because it's so different than everything else that we've seen out there. What is it? It's an evergreen shrub that takes on maroon foliage cast during the dormant months, which is really quite nice in wintertime. And it has these kind of varied foliage qualities. So you've got this very spinose leaf texture. You can see a couple of these branches back here that have this really spinose leaf structure. That's the juvenile tissue. That's tissue that is not able to flower or fruit yet. And then as it gains the capacity to flower or fruit, the foliage changes its shape and its texture so that the leaves turn like that for the branches that are able to flower and fruit. So part of this plant lacks that ability, part of the plant has the ability to flower and fruit. I think that's cool. I think that's fun. I think that's a unique kind of quality. The fact that it gets this evergreen but purpley foliage in the wintertime, I think has some ornamental value. It's a plant I stuck here not thinking it was actually going to live. I was thinking this was probably going to be a Zone 7 kind of plant, but you don't know until you try to kill them. Plant it and you see, this has been here for 4 or 5 years, so it's been through some harsher winters, some variation in our winters, so and it's come through in good shape. It's not like it looks really horrible at the end of each winter. So I have some expectation that this is going to be a performer in our climate. Flowers are yellow. These clusters of yellow flowers that are about 3 inches long. They're fragrant, pleasantly fragrant, blooming in spring. I have not seen any fruit set on it, so I don't have any. People hear barberry as a term and they think of the invasive barberries. I don't have concerns about that with this intergeneric hybrid. It may in fact be sterile, but we're still learning about this plant. So. Cotoneaster, which we're pretty excited about. This is, so I'm fortunate that part of my job allows me to go on a trip or 2 or more every year to kind of visit a bunch of places and see fun stuff and bring back plants. And we've got we have really good relationships with a lot of the different botanical gardens, arboretums, and so forth that are across the country. So this is a plant that I collected when I was visiting down at the J.C. Ralston Arboretum, which is in Raleigh, North Carolina. And this is Cotoneaster glaucophyllus, I think? Yeah, glaucophyllus. I don't know a lot about it. We rooted some cuttings. We're growing it. The plant at the Ralston Arboretum is about 4 feet high. What attracted me the most was kind of that silver cast of the foliage. I love plants with silvery foliage. It's going to require full sun like all the Cotoneaster require. You can see that this one here has a couple red fruit on it. So if you can envision a 4-foot tall plant with prolific red fruit, that kind of paints the picture. The foliage is pristine after a pretty wet growing season that we've had. And that says a lot about the plant as well. If the foliage is going to be that clean after the amount of moisture we had this summer, that sets it up to be a really good plant. So very early in our process here, we do have some plants that are going to be available, so you can learn with us, kind of thing. But again, that I think speaks to the diversity of that group of Cotoneaster.